world is shaken by a war without guns, an unprecedented trade war that the United States, under Donald Trump, is the initiator. Why is just one decision by Mr. Trump enough to make the stock market shake, businesses freeze, and the global supply chain paralyzed? When jobs are no longer stable and insecurity spreads across countries, is this a strategy to protect American interests or a global economic bullying? In that chaotic context, policy decisions from the White House are forcing the whole world to cope, whether we like it or not. The US has an ironic way of calculating its trade deficit that few people pay attention to. They focus only on physical goods, that is, items that can be held, such as vehicles, machinery, or food. But the strange thing is, they don't take into account the intangibles, which is where America is really strong. Services, intelligence, or copyright, things that the US dominates, are not included. It's like you only look at the number of cars a rich man has to evaluate his wealth, without even looking at the pile of real estate, stocks, or incredibly valuable intellectual property rights he holds. And so, America keeps complaining about the trade deficit, when in reality, they are playing a game that benefits themselves. Imagine a boss hires a maid to clean the house, then blames her for not buying a car from his company to balance the relationship. It's so absurd that it's funny. But that's the way America is applying to the world. They sell goods to other countries, then turn around and demand that those countries also buy back American goods at the same value, regardless of actual needs. In the end, it all became clear. America is strong, and it is that strength that allows them to bully the whole world. When America makes any decision, just a blink of an eye is enough to turn the entire global economy upside down. Smaller countries, even if they protest or are indignant, can only remain silent or compromise because there is no way to react strongly. America does not need to be aggressive, just maintain its position as a giant with dollars in hand, and it can control the whole world to its liking. Weaker countries, even if they want to change, can only watch America do what they want. Every time Donald Trump speaks out about the trade deficit, he always complains that the US is having to spend its own money to consume goods from other countries. But no one buys goods from the US. The result was a trade deficit, and he kept complaining. However, there is a question that makes many people stop and think. If America keeps running a trade deficit and still remains rich, what makes them still stand strong, even stronger? The answer lies in an extremely important point that Trump and many people do not consider. When talking about the deficit, he only looked at the export and import of goods, things that everyone can touch and see, such as clothes, cars, and components. But he forgot something extremely important. America is not only strong in goods, but also the king of services, especially creative, technological, and financial services. It is technology, innovation, and financial services that make America rich, not the production of ordinary goods. Think about it. Companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, or financial services like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan have been generating a huge amount of profit for the US, but are not counted in the trade balance that Trump is complaining about. America does not export raw goods, but it exports intangible but extremely valuable products. And that is the reason why, despite the trade deficit, America continues to get richer, and other countries, no matter how hard they try, still cannot catch up. The US always complains about the trade deficit, but there is one thing that few people know, or more accurately, the US deliberately hides, which is a huge goldmine that they are exporting: services. And among these services, there is an extremely important industry that no one expected: education. In 2023, the world will spend up to $40 billion on American education, a huge number that Forbes pointed out. But interestingly, the US never included this amount in the so-called trade balance. So while other countries have to race to sell goods, America exports intellectuals and knowledge, causing millions of students from all over the world to flock to study at prestigious universities such as Harvard, Stanford, or MIT. Every international student, when they spend money to study in America, is essentially sending money into the American economy without having to bring any cars or physical products with them. The strange thing is that although this huge amount of money flows to the US, it is not included in the trade deficit figure that Trump or US officials always complain about. A very smart way of calculating that America not only keeps the big cake for itself, but also quietly recovers from what is invisible but extremely valuable. And so, while the world is busy counting material things, America still sits in a corner, profiting from services that no one counts. In addition to education, the US has another service export segment that few people pay attention to, which is healthcare and tourism, two other golden industries in which they are quietly earning billions of dollars that no one talks about. Surely you have heard about many patients from all over the world, especially developed countries, flocking to the US for treatment. These are not just sick people looking for good doctors, but in fact, America is exporting medical services. Every surgery, every treatment from big hospitals like Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins brings huge sums of money, thereby bringing real money into the US economy. But again, this number is not included in the trade balance, even though the US is earning tons of foreign currency from providing medical services to other countries. Not stopping there, tourism is also an export segment that cannot be ignored. Every year, millions of international visitors come to America to visit famous cities, from New York to Los Angeles, from Las Vegas to Miami. When these tourists spend money to experience services, visit sites, or shop, they are bringing dollars into the United States and spending them in the domestic economy. That's right, the money never left the US border, but in essence it was collected by the US from other countries, a true form of export that few people realize. So while most of the world focuses on exporting goods, the US cleverly takes advantage of these invisible service industries to constantly get rich without having to export any specific goods. Every time tourists come or patients come for treatment, America earns a large amount of money from exports that no one can count. Another export segment that the US keeps hidden is technology giants such as Netflix, Google, Apple, and Facebook. These companies provide services globally, from Vietnam to every country, and earn a huge amount of money for the US economy. But this is a form of invisible export that is not counted in the trade balance. The US not only exports goods but also exports technology services, but only counts the deficit. This creates a misleading picture of the trade situation, helping the US put pressure on trading partners, causing them to endure the decisions the US makes without being able to react strongly. The US has a sophisticated dollar attraction strategy that few people pay attention to. To understand clearly, let's follow the life cycle of the dollar. When countries export goods to the US, they receive dollars in return. But then, what do they do with all this money? Unable to keep the dollar in their hands forever, they began to find ways to use it. One of the easiest options is to buy US government bonds. That's right, when these countries invested in bonds, they unintentionally sent their money back to America. And this is just one part of this game. Another way the US also gets back dollars is when these countries have to buy US services. Whether it's software, technology services, or even other services, it all puts dollars back in America. So, will America lose money? The answer is no. The US simply wisely lends dollars and then gets them back in other ways, creating a virtuous cycle in which no one really loses. While other countries have to deal with their piles of dollars, America easily makes their money return without any effort. The ingenuity of this strategy is its ingenuity and seemingly harmless steps, but it helps the US maintain financial strength that no one can match. Imagine holding a pile of dollars in your hand, thinking you own a valuable asset. But the truth is, if you can't spend those dollars, it's nothing more than a worthless pile of paper. Countries export goods to the US, receive dollars, but then have headaches because they don't know what to do with this money. That is the game that America has cleverly created. No matter how much goods countries sell to the US, in the end, the money still has to return to the US. One way or another, dollars never leave America's borders. No matter how many dollars countries hoard, if not used properly, in the end they are just valuable, waste of paper. They will have to find a way to bring it to the US because that is the only place that can convert it into real assets. America is not a country known for digging coal or producing goods with its muscle. Instead, America's strength comes from its intelligence, from innovative ideas, groundbreaking technology, and superior services. It is these intangible things that are the real resources that make this country rich. However, Donald Trump focuses on imposing tariffs on goods, as if this is the only way to solve the trade deficit problem. This can be a short-sighted strategy, as it only looks at one side of the economy, while the US makes most of its money from intangibles like technology and services. But perhaps Trump is not naive, but is actually calculating, using taxes as a trick to gain an advantage in negotiation. When the US continuously imposed taxes and put countries in difficult positions, reactions began to erupt. Canada, always patient, cannot bear it anymore. "I can't stand it anymore," they said, and decided to stand up and protest. They were prepared to respond strongly, no longer as patient as before. And China, an economic power that is not easily conquered, has also declared that if the US continues to impose tariffs, they will not hesitate to counterattack. China is even ready to enter a currency war, shaking the global economy. This warning is not just a roar, but a powerful declaration of war from a real opponent of America. The situation became more and more tense when international automobile companies began to stop production, not daring to make any major decisions. They are standing still, waiting to see where the situation will go. Worries about a currency war about to break out make people panic, because if this happens, it will not only disrupt the US economy, but also cause global chaos. Leaders and businesses fear that this confrontation could push the world economy into an unpredictable crisis. Every small move in the trade war can now push the world into a chaotic situation where no one can predict the outcome. The US has cleverly used the one-way policy to take advantage of its economic power, while calling for poverty while continuing to get rich thanks to exporting services and intelligence. But will the world continue to turn a blind eye to this deceit? Donald Trump has used the trade balance to exert pressure, deliberately forgetting the fact that the US lacks nothing but reasons to continue imposing. Small countries have now realized this game and have begun to counterattack, not allowing themselves to be crushed any further. Where will this tension go? Follow us to update the latest developments.